before I ask a question, I actually have a little comment I wanted to make. I have a friend, actually my neighbor, she has a 7-year-old daughter, our daughters are the same age. And recently her daughter was diagnosed with ADHD, so they are realizing now that she will need extra help at school. She's trying to put an IEP in place, and just last week the school is telling her that they're trying to direct her to something else, because an IEP is a permanent plan that she, with additional funds that will have to be devoted to her daughter, and they're trying to divert that to something else. And the way that they're doing is they're telling her that her daughter is doing too well. She's not failing as a student, and so she does not adequately fit into that eligibility to get an IEP. And that's just, you're nodding, this is something that happens all the time, and I'm sure that it does.
There's a flow chart that you actually have to follow. That has your child been diagnosed with something, and then a category of some things? Yes. If yes, then the question is, are they failing to make reasonable progress? And if the answer is yes, then you're eligible for special education, but if the answer is no, then you're not.
Right. So this is what this mother is faced with, as many, I assume, that she cannot help her child right now, or is she struggling to put these things in place that will be helpful to her daughter so she doesn't fail. And the only time that these things will kick in is when she's actually failing. And just another example of how things are just completely backwards. My question is about the MCATs and all these testing that's in place. Is there a way to avoid that? Are they a requirement that will at some point be a barrier to a child, or can you simply as a parent make a decision and say, I don't want to do this?
You can opt out. There's no penalty in grades. The test is given in grades 3 through 8, and then in high school. The penalty comes if you opt out of the 10th grade tests that are a high school graduation requirement. And I just have to note, as I always do, that Massachusetts is now one of only 11 states that still use the state test for a high school graduation requirement. It went from a high of 27 down to 11, because everybody realizes that it's not helpful, it's harmful. It hurts, especially the most vulnerable students with disabilities and English language learners. We've developed this test to identify people that are vulnerable and punish them versus helping them. But there's no penalty for a child or a family for opting out in grades 3 through 8.
But what will happen, right? So again, MCAS is a tool of privatization. Going back to what Ruth said, standardized testing was created by the eugenics movement. The IQ test and the SAT was designed to try to prove a racist narrative that white people are intellectually superior to people of color. Okay, back then we called them Negroes. By design, it creates a racial hierarchy. White students and Asian students always score on the top, and students of color and English language learners always score on the bottom. It is the tool that they are using to justify privatization. So we set schools up to teach with evidence-based curriculum to get them ready for college and career. We measure them simply with a test, which is designed to create a so-called achievement gap. So we're using a tool to close the achievement gap, but it creates the achievement gap. And then when the school fails wholesale, it gets pushed into the charter school system, or the kids get pushed into the school-to-prison pipeline, right? In order to maintain the system, there needs to be threats, right? So superintendents are threatened by DESE if you choose to opt out, or if I choose to refuse to give the test. Principals are threatened by the superintendent if they allow the parent to choose to opt out or the teacher to refuse to administer. The teachers are threatened by the principal with the evaluation tool and dismissal if we choose to stop administering or tell you that you have the right to opt out. So you should opt out. You can expect massive resistance and pushback from the superintendent and the principal. And we've been trying to grow an opt-out movement, but it's really hard because of the misinformation and the fear. But try it and work
And
with
when they
Lisa
ask,
on
when they
that.
say you can't say, I didn't ask for your permission. I'm telling you, my
Yeah.
child is not
Right.
taking this test. It's
Well,
not
I
a-
will
yeah.
say that I actually knew the answer. But I wanted to ask the question because I have myself seen the resistance in the parents, because the parents have no idea.
Right.
And I've heard stories where they tell me my child is not sleeping for days leading up to the test.
Yeah,
And so, but they don't know that they have an option to say no.
right, right.
So,
This is also very racial because, but, not racial, but families who are wealthy, if their child, and this happens all the time in Massachusetts, fails the test in 10th grade, they take them out and put them in a private school. And private school don't require the MCAS, hello, okay? It's the information that has inspired me to write a book about, I call it, the standardization of other people's children. Because the people who are mandating this, their children don't have to go through the process. And let me just tell you one more thing. A Puerto Rican psychologist designed an IQ test in New York City based on the Puerto Rican culture and language. Instead of apples and grapes, he used mangoes and canepas, which I'm sure you don't know what canepas are.
no.
But he selected 100 students, 50 white students and 50 Puerto Ricans. How do you think the outcome came? Same as today, only the Puerto Ricans were high proficient and the whites were low proficient. That's what the test is all about.
Yeah, I was just saying, policy violent.
It is, it's violence.
Hi, I want to expand a little on what you said about like free versus public. I went to Brooklyn College and my expenses were my textbooks, period. That was in the 60s. We've forgotten that in New York City and in California at some point there was that. I want to suggest like a broad frame for the moral budget that challenges what's public and what's private. In, you know, we are in the Commonwealth, and how much has been stolen. Just, there's a great book, and I'll just give one little quick example, called Unjust Deserts. I think one of the authors is Gar Alperovitz. But he says things like, who did more for General Electric? Niels Faraday, who discovered electricity, or the CEO? We own in common electricity. And he goes in the book in all of the things that even I hadn't thought of before I read, of what we own and what's ours. How most people, for example, most inventions, the people who invent them contribute about 10% of new knowledge. The rest is ours, right? But then they don't pay any taxes and they don't. And I just think that the framework of the moral budget should be what we own and what we're gonna take back.
And I just wanna add a nuance to that too, like, we underwrite MIT and Harvard and BU and the 10 universities that don't pay taxes because they're a nonprofit. So this institution should be free too. This should be a public institution because our tax dollars underwrite it. So when we talk about free higher ed, we shouldn't just be talking about free public ed. It should just be free higher ed across.
Thank you so much.